All right. Are we recording or live? Whichever we're doing, Evan?
We are recording. I am getting the stream going as we speak.
Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order at 6:04.
Sorry, bear
And
with me one
the
second.
first, is that okay, Evan?
September 5th. And
Evan, are we able to proceed?
Let's see.
hey, I'm sorry. The phone rang at the same time. I'm having a problem doing the stream. It's telling me I don't have access.
Okay, so we can record and
But we
post
are
it
recording.
to the
We are recording.
YouTube channel. Okay, great. So we'll call this meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. And the first order of business is to approve the minutes from August 12th. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Any second? Thank you, Diana. All right. Any changes to the minutes? I found none.
None
No?
for me.
Okay, great. All right. All those in favor of approving the minutes as is, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sherelle?
Sherelle is on. She can hear us, but she can't speak.
She can't vote. Okay, so I guess we can put her as an abstention, but the motion passes. Okay. So Tom, do you want to go ahead and talk about the fiscal year 1920 close and see what action needs to be taken?
Sure. We have a number of different spreadsheets, if you will, in the backup material. I'll scroll through them that relate to the year-end close. I'll scroll first, assuming I can scroll. I'm scrolling past the year-end budget transfers. We'll come back to those because I think we had those as a separate item on the agenda, but these are in fact also part of the close of the fiscal year. And actually, before I get to this spreadsheet, this one here is a few pages long. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at it. This is a financial run of rolled up by object code of the district original budget, which is this first column here, followed by the revised budget, which incorporates any budget transfers and special appropriations. And the memo balance column is the actual expenditures for the year. And then the free balance is just a calculation of the what's left revised budget compared to actual expenditures. And so this particular schedule has several pages of line items for the district, and so you can see where the district underspent its budget. If I scroll to the last page, you'll see the final results here on the bottom show that the district spent $197,225,654 with a budget of adjusted budget, which includes special appropriations and any carryover that was carried forward from last year into this year's budget of 202,204,108. And so that leaves a free balance of just under $5 million, $4,978,000. There are a number of obligations that still exist at the end of the year that are outstanding, and we have these categorized into a couple of areas. One is accounts payable, which are items for which we receive the goods or services by June 30th, but have not yet either received a bill or processed a bill. Those total $178,000. We have purchase orders that were issued to vendors prior to June 30th. And generally in this case, it would be for goods or services that are in process of being delivered. So there's some items, it could be furniture, it could be, some other things like that. And we'll go back in a moment to the itemized list. We do have an itemized list of these carryover items, but those are obligations against the old year, and so they need to be taken into account. That leaves a net balance that's unencumbered and available of $4,148,000. And then we've listed here a couple of, so that is the amount that really is truly available, is the $4.1 million. There was discussion from a number of months back about the expectation that the city had that we would repay the city for the special appropriation that was provided to the board in December. That was $1 million. And as the board will recall, or the committee will recall, during the development of the budget this year, we expected there would be some turn back, and we built into our budget reconciliation the expectation that there would be a turn back and that we would request the city to carry over $1.5 million to support the 2021 budget. And so that indicates that there's still, even beyond those two commitments, an additional $1.6 million that's available. So just going back for a moment to the itemized list of, and this is rather small. I'll see if I can increase the size a little bit. This is the itemized list of encumbrances that are outstanding, as well as the accounts payable items that are outstanding. I don't want to, unless you want to go through them, I'm not going to go over all of them. It includes, some big items such as the June unemployment bill from the state that was actually just received, and I believe it may have been processed last week, or it may be in the downstairs and being processed this week. But at the point that this was put together, that was still an outstanding item. There's some items related to, some equipment and other things that were ordered in June and had not been fully received, or the projects, in some cases, there are some capital items that, were in process and hadn't been completed and fully paid for. Again, where this sort of leaves us is at the very bottom. I've indicated here the provision under which boards of education are permitted to request carryover funds. There is a special state statute on this. It's Connecticut General Statute 10-248A, and it was revised fairly recently. It previously said that boards of education could request a carryover of 1%. That was revised to 2%. So the current carryover limit is 2%, which it's 2% of your prior year budget. So in this case, 2% of the original budget for 1920 of $198.4 million is $3,968,827. And at this point, I would recommend that you, consider or have discussion about bringing forward to the full board a request up to the maximum carryover. We do know that the budget requires a $1.5 million carryover to balance the budget. And we also know that we have some extraordinary expenses related to COVID-19 and the reopening of the schools. And so I would recommend that the board consider simply, asking or authorizing the administration to request the maximum carryover that's permitted under law, and then, of course, consistent with the amount of funding that is available. Just to kind of round out a little bit, this particular statute is sort of unique to boards of education, but we're all familiar, of course, with the special appropriation process, which we went through last year when it related to the ELL special appropriation. A special appropriation requires approval in Norwalk from both the Board of Estimate and Taxation, first the mayor, the Board of Estimate and Taxation, and then the Common Council. In the case of this particular carryover that's permitted under CGS 10-248A, it just requires approval from the appropriating body for the municipality. So in our case, it's approval from the Board of Estimate and Taxation. So the authorization to carry over funds in this case only needs approval from the Board of Estimate and Taxation. It's my understanding that our carryover list will be going to the Board of Estimate in, I believe, in October is what I understand from the City Controller. And so it would be appropriate at that point to, also have the Board of Estimate consider, a carryover related to, this 10-248A.
Okay, and should we go ahead and move that forward from this committee? I think the members would be supportive of doing that, but we should probably do it formally.
Yes, I think that would be wise. And at this point, I would just simply say to request, a carryover, the maximum amount that's
Allowable by statute.
And permitted under CGS 10-248A.
Okay. May I have a motion from the floor to request from the Board of Estimate and Taxation the full 2% carryover as funds are available pursuant to the statute 10-248A. Moved by Diana, second by Colin. Any discussion?
Let's get every penny.
Right.
I think there's a deep understanding on the part of the city that we're taking on unprecedented costs in order to be able to reopen, and that we are doing so from a leadership position by providing 5 days of instruction to our elementary students, our special education students, and our English language learners. So I think everybody understands the unusual costs that we're incurring and that we need support for that. So, okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Sherelle
and Diana
posted,
raised her hand and Sherelle wrote in the notes, so that is unanimous in favor. Motion passes. Okay,
Okay,
so what's
great.
next?
Thank you. So I guess the next item on the agenda I'll scroll back up there just so we've got the agenda in front of us. Then I'll come down to the backup. So the next item on the agenda is
The
review
facilities.
operating budget and capital budget facilities improvement expenditures. And the chair requested this item on the agenda. I think there's a couple of different schedules that we have here that address this. So I'll just scroll through those and talk to those briefly and see if there's any questions. So the first one is this account here, which is a capital budget account. So this is funded in the city's capital budget, and it is used for principally for emergency type expenses or unplanned expenses that arise. And the city has provided us about $200,000 a year for this account. And we have used it for a variety of things. So we've tried to categorize here the different items that, that were funded from this. So there's asbestos abatement. There was the marine science project at Brian McMahon that ended up costing considerably more than was originally anticipated and was originally available. So that some extra expenses ended up being paid from this account. There was heat issue and boiler issues at Brian McMahon, asbestos abatement at Fox Run, dishwasher project at Kendall. You can see also the Kendall and Roten air conditioning, a small piece was charged here, probably because we had fully expended the budgets on those. There was some money spent at Marvin related again to HVAC as well as mold. Fuel pipe at Narragansett, which was a code issue, I believe. Some money at Norwalk High School. At Roten, there was money related to the replacement of the rubberized treads at the in the stairwells, which were a trip hazard at Roten. Some asbestos abatement at Rowayton, and water damage and mold at West Rocks. So we spent a total of $224,000 from that capital account. And as a capital account, the money does carry over from year to year. So that's why, there was some money left over from the prior year. So that's why it was more than $200,000. So I don't know if there's any questions on any of these projects or.
I have a question. Where does that account stand now as we move into the next fiscal year?
I believe there is a small balance left. I'm going to need to check that. I don't know whether Kristen, do you want to see if you can look up project CO587 in the capital budget, Fund 09, and see if you can pull a balance on that. If I remember correctly, I'm not sure that the city budgeted a new allocation this year. I think they might have not budgeted a new allocation, but I'm.
I thought it survived at 200.
Maybe it did. Yeah, maybe it did. I'm not 100% sure. I'm a little fuzzy on that. I know at one point there was an issue about it, so I don't know, how much money is there, but hopefully Kristen can find that. So the CO587 is under project and Fund 09.
So the marine science program, that took up almost half of what we spent in repairs.
Yeah.
I don't remember that going through sort of an approval process other than, that we had planned to do the project. is there a distinction in the process made between when something is a repair or maintenance versus something that's a new program or a new construction?
I mean, I think the answer is no, not really. I think, this is a pool of money that's available to cover things that are unexpected and for which there, isn't another source of funding that was specifically identified. So this is used as kind of a catch-all kind of account that we use in a variety of areas to address things that come up, whether they be, a mold issue or a boiler that breaks down, or asbestos tiles that are popping up that need to be fixed. So it's really used for a variety of things. In this case, the marine science project was put together and I think had a project budget. I don't remember the exact amount, but I think it was we had been led to believe it was a pretty small project. I think $75,000 is what's sticking in my head. And when it kind of all really came together and went out to bid and needed to be constructed in time for a program that was starting in September that year, it was more than had been originally estimated. And so this account was used to cover it. Now that project, as I recall, since it was over threshold, it does go. One other important thing to understand is that the capital accounts are really under the control of the city, because the city capital budget goes through the city approval process. So if they're under, if they're small amounts, then they're just approved by the city purchasing agent. But the marine science project would have gone through an approval process that actually involved the Common Council. And so I'm sure we identified the accounts that were going to be charged. And this was one of the accounts that was so identified because, when we found that we needed more than was originally set aside for it, there wouldn't have been time to go back for a separate additional appropriation at that point and make it through the process and have it in place for the start of school that year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Tom,
Okay.
are you looking for the capital account, the life balance, which is the same as the fiscal 2021 balance available? That's what you're asking?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there may be multiple accounts there because
Right.
each year has a separate account. So you might have to ask for a total, I think.
Yeah.
It's okay. We can look into it later.
One I'm looking at in particular is $810, but I can try to pull them all.
Hopefully, okay. I hope there's more than $810 there, but okay. So this is the detail on the numbers we just looked at. And then there is, I've got to scroll through the schedules we just looked at. Okay, so this account here, in addition to the capital account, we also have money in the board operating budget that is in a 450 account, which is a capital repair account. And this is used for, again, district-wide expenses, variety of items in here. And so this is the total, and it looks like the total that was spent last year was $423,000, and this is the breakout by project and location. I don't know if you want me to walk through them or whether you want to just ask questions. The first item here is project management for multiple schools. We do use CGS, the Construction Solutions Group, has a additional person who is dedicated to working on Board of Ed projects. And this was in lieu of adding staff in the facilities area, was to contract out additional service because there's just too many projects and too much work to be done for, essentially what is really a two-person this facilities department essentially consists of Bill Hodell and George Sveck as the people who would take responsibility for overseeing projects. And so this provides an additional body to help manage some of this capital work. And then the rest of the items here are projects at various schools. Some of them are small items, and then some of them are, again, being used to supplement other sources of funding so that projects can be completed. So you've got some of the work at Tracy in the kitchen and the cafeteria. You had some looks like some security work and PA system work that was done at a number of different schools. You see some water damage repairs and landscaping work. The dance floor at Wolf Pit, which is part of the move to a arts, ultimately to an arts magnet school there, was the intention, and some work at the West Rocks cafeteria. So I think that's the bulk of it there.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? And if I recall, this budget line we kept flat for next year, for this fiscal year that we're now in.
Yes, that's my recollection, is we kept that line flat. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then
So
the
if I
last,
add up the total, sorry to interrupt you, the total, it's 38,880. Is that what you're looking for the 5
it's
accounts?
yeah, so it's only 38,000. Yeah.
For the whole
38,000.
year?
That's
Yeah.
what's the available balance for the 5
So-
accounts.
So I'm thinking that the city did not appropriate the additional 200,000 there. If that's the balance, then
That's what's showing.
we're going to actually have less money to do work this year.
If we have a major problem, we'll have to go through the special appropriation process for capital repair.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the last account I pulled for you as well was from the school-based budgets, the student-based budgets. There has been some work that a number of the schools have done, so basically you see here these tend to be smaller items, but they've done some painting at Tracy, and they've done some electrical work at a number of the schools, outlets and so forth. So there has been $65,000 also spent in the school budgets last year.
I remember also additional expenses. I think, didn't Roten have the painter for a month painting those hallways?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And
Yes.
also, I think Tracy had beyond what's listed here, because I remember we approved it in February.
Yeah. This, well, Tracy, there may be some money still on Tracy on that encumbrance list. I'm not sure whether
Right.
some of that work may have been taking place this summer, possibly. So.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay. So I think that covers that item on the agenda. If I go back to the beginning, the next item up is the year-end transfers, and there's quite a few pages of year-end transfers, so I'm not going to try to walk through them. They start here, and a lot of these are really just related to cleaning up wage accounts where somebody moved from one location to another location, and so most of them are really just really year-end cleanup kind of things. We included on this list, even though the amounts under 10,000 do not actually require, being on this list or require going to the board. It's just easier for us with these year-end cleanup transfers to just list them all than to break them out on the amounts that are above or below 10,000. But you will see a lot of items on here that are, well below $10,000. So, many of those are really routine items. We have tried to add some explanations where it was, something specific, and you'll see a number of them are in fact related to COVID type expenses. So postage, for instance, there was a large transfer into the postage account, and that was because of the mailing of the learning packets in the spring, and that was unanticipated, unbudgeted expense. So we did have a number of expenses like that were related to COVID that required cleanup transfers at the end. So I'm going to just see if there's any questions, or are there any items that you specifically want to focus in on or ask a question about?
I think I already asked my questions and forwarded your responses to the committee. Are there any other questions from other members? Colin?
I didn't have any.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So if there are no more questions on that.
Okay, so I'll go back up, and then we have update on reopening costs.
Wait, we don't need to approve those?
Oh, yeah.
They're already in the agenda for the board. But
right, they're going to the board, so you should approve them. I'm sorry, yes.
that's okay. Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the year-end 2019-20 budget transfers?
I make that motion.
Colin, and second? Diana?
Aye.
Diana? Great, okay, and any discussion? I think we just had an opportunity for that. So all those in favor of approving these budget transfers?
Aye.
Okay, that's 3, and let me see if Sherelle. I don't see a message from Sherelle, but we can always add it in. Rosemary, do you have access to the
Let
chat?
me see if, I'm going to try seeing if she sends me a response.
Okay, we can always put it as an abstention or amend the vote when she checks in. Okay, so in the interest of time, why don't we go ahead and move on to the update on reopening costs?
Okay, so what I provided to you was the same information that we presented to the board. And so, I don't want to necessarily repeat everything I said at that meeting, but just mostly indicate to you, that this is still very much a moving target. We are continuing to update and refresh the numbers as we get new information. And I'm sorry, I'll see if I can get down to the section here. Okay. So, so again, this is the same information. At this point, we've identified, 10.4 million of revenue.
Excuse me,
And,
Tom.
Yes.
I just heard back from Sherelle, and she voted yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. So this was, again, the schedule that we presented to the board at the board workshop, showing projected expenditures of $15.5 million, and therefore a tentative shortfall of about $5.1 million. Now, we have been updating the number. One of the numbers that we are working on and hoping to achieve some savings in is the area of the bus monitors, and the $3.2 million estimate there was based on 58 bus monitors. The original analysis that we had put together assumed that those positions were going to be at a union scale of like 21, 25 an hour, I believe, or thereabouts. And we've actually gone forward and hired temporary employees at a significantly lower hourly rate of $13 an hour. So that does generate some pretty substantial savings. The other unknown here is the extent to which we're going to have to provide or not have to provide employee benefits, health benefits to these employees, as well as to a number of our other employees who are new paraeducators and paraeducators who are currently with the district, who are moving from 27 and a half hours up to 35 hours a week as part of the reopening plan. And for us, for the district, and under the Affordable Care Act, the threshold of 30 hours per week is a very important threshold, because that's the threshold under the Affordable Care Act, and it's the threshold under our labor contract where we're required to provide full benefits. And so there is quite a bit of uncertainty about how many of these employees will elect to take the benefits, because some of them may have benefits already from another source, and so we're not really sure how many of these employees will take benefits. We hope to know the answer to that fairly quickly, within the next week or so, I would hope. And the bus monitors, part of that's going to depend on how long the bus routes are, and that we're going to get a better handle on as we get through the first couple of weeks of school, and see whether or not the bus routes are the estimate from our transportation coordinator, Joanna, was that it would be somewhere between 5.5 and 6.5 hours a day. Well, 5.5 hours a day puts you at 27.5 hours a week, and 6.5 hours a day puts you at 32.5 hours a week. So that's, we're going to have to just kind of play that by ear and see where that all lands. But there may be, we're hoping that there's going to be some savings and benefits there for us, or that, our assumption that they will all take benefits maybe will, not come to pass, but we'll have to see. Now, there's other areas in here that I'm quite sure, as we, are now reopened, and as new information comes in, as, principals report, that they have additional needs in this area or that area, there's going to be some things that push our costs up as well. So where this is all going to land is still, it's still a moving target. We're getting certainly much closer, and I am still feeling confident that at the end of the day we're going to bring this budget, this reopening budget, into a balanced place that is going to work and provide us what we need, and we're going to have the money to do what we need to do. But it is we all have to be sort of comfortable with a bit of uncertainty and ambiguity in the environment that we're all working in today. So I indicated here some gap closing measures that we're looking at. One is the additional carryover funding that would be potentially available. That does still require approval from the city, and so that but that's one way to close what last week was a $5 million gap. Right now, based on the lower rate of pay that we have for bus monitors, I think the gap we've calculated at about $4.3 million. But again, it's a moving number. We'll have to see, where I think benefits are really going to be the key. And the rest of these items we're going to have to work through. So I think that's really all I can provide in terms of update. As we get more information, we'll, probably next month, I think we can share with you an updated spreadsheet as to where we are. But this is where we seem to be at the moment.
Can I ask a question directed both to you and to Dr. Estrella? Are we intentionally freezing in discretionary areas until we are certain of where our funding will fall? You know, obviously we're still waiting to see what happens with federal level and carryover. Have we sort of targeted where we would need to freeze if we wanted to do so?
So one of the things that Tom and I have been talking about is around consultants. So other than those that are special education related and specific to the needs of children, we're looking to freeze any consulting contracts that might have been in progress but not finalized. Is one of the ways in which we're like looking into potentially finding resources. We're also I've been trying to engage the mayor and letting him know the status and where we are, and hopefully we can roll over these funds to close out the gap that we currently have. I've also been in communication with members of the state, and I'm in the process of scheduling something with the chief financial officer to see if there's room to acquire additional resources given the number of children that we have in person. Because the other thing that's happening, because the community has seen the way that we've managed reopening, a lot of families are requesting to come in person as well. So the actual numbers that we have continue to increase on a daily basis because families are feeling comfortable to send their children to school. But those are some of the potential ways, and I don't know, Tom, if you want to add anything else that we're trying to mitigate.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is I've also had discussions with Bill Hodell, the facilities director, and asked him to hold off on initiating any sort of discretionary type facilities projects. And, you know, obviously if a boiler goes out and you know, we're not going to have heat in the building, we need to get that repaired. But I've asked him to hold off on other projects that would be just more discretionary in nature because of the fact that, you know, we don't know if we're going to need to scoop those fundings to those funds to cover these types of expenses.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer.
Okay. I don't know if there's any other questions on the reopening update. If not, I will see where we are on the agenda. All right. Okay.
Also, it was nice to see the Lieutenant Governor in Norwalk today. I hope that was a good opportunity to talk about our needs.
Unfortunately, like her focus was mainly around reopening, and like she was visiting some of the food pantries, so we really didn't have the opportunity to have that kind of conversation. She had a really targeted focus around just getting to see the classrooms and focus on the principal and what the experience was like.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. All right, so should we move on to the financial implications of the extension of summer meal programs?
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't have as much information as I hope to be able to share with you when we put this on the agenda, because I have not had a chance to get an update from Kevin McGinn. I think, you know, in retrospect, thinking about food service, and I know the amount of work involved in the first few days of school, he's, I'm sure, been inundated with that, and I didn't want to pull him away from you know, important work going on in the schools. But what I did include here was this is the press release from the U.S. Department of Agriculture extending the emergency summer feeding program through December 31st. And so what that does mean is it means free meals for all children through December 31st. And so that certainly is great news. We did get more schools added to CEP this year, but still the majority of our schools, are not on the CEP program as of yet. So being able to provide free meals for all children, at least through the end of December, is certainly welcome. And what I can say is based on we know that the reimbursement rate for the summer feeding program is pretty favorable. And, we know that in the months of May and June in particular, we did very well with the summer feeding program, and the revenues for May and June were very strong. Actually, I just was pulling the numbers on food services, and the revenues, the state revenues last year were up, considerably compared to the prior year, even though we're on the new the summer feeding program all summer. So I believe the answer is that the financial implication from having the extension of the summer feeding program is going to be a financial positive for the district, because while we won't have the meal charges from students that would be collecting, given the current environment, the COVID-19 pandemic, we weren't going to have any of the a la carte revenues really anyway. All we were going to get was going to be the student portion, paying for the meals, who didn't qualify for free or reduced lunch. And so having the reimbursement for all students based on the summer feeding program rate, again, it's a more favorable rate than they pay during the regular school year on the regular free and reduced lunch program. So I think I can say quite confidently that it's a financial, it's to the district's financial advantage to have this program continue through December 31st. And of course, it's got the added advantage of our students, who may be struggling, and families who may be struggling are not going to have to be worried about how they're paying for meals. So it's I think it's really a win-win.
Agreed. My back, if it ends on December 31st, that we could end up saving about 200,000 maybe of the, because we lose on the food service program.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably a reasonable estimate. I think that's probably a reasonable estimate, that it's probably a $200,000 added benefit to the district. But unfortunately, I was looking to get actual calculations of the number, but I needed to be able to meet with Kevin, and Kevin and I unfortunately weren't able to do that. So. But I think 200,000 is probably a pretty accurate estimate.
There are two issues that I am concerned about. One is that the memo suggested that there was only a limited amount of funding appropriated, so it may not actually last until the December 31st date. So we should probably keep our eye on that and hope, of course, that there's funding for this included in whatever the next legislation is. And then the second thing is, should a vaccine come out in November or December and people decide that this program won't be needed after December 31st, we should probably have a pre-holiday break focus on making sure that we're enrolling everybody who needs to be enrolled in free and reduced lunch, so that we don't fall off the cliff on January 1st or
Right.
the beginning of the school year.
Yeah, I think those are both good suggestions.
Okay, does anyone else have any discussion on this point? Okay, I think we can continue on our merry way.
Okay, so I think the next item up is transfers for the current fiscal year 2021. There are a few transfers here. And Kristen, I don't know, do you want to just run through these or talk to them briefly?
That's fine. There's the three of them. The first one is Silvermine proactively, this was early on, taking funding from the library books and the daily sub account and shifting it to increase hours of 4 paras from 19.5 to 27.5 hours for assistance in the classroom. The next item for $94,000 was to move funding from the out-of-district tuition account in order to move it to an ABA, cover an ABA position for a student who had moved back into district. And then the last one is to transfer money in the testing area from equipment to other professional services related to the Ames Web Plus Complete, which is reading and math assessment. It's a web-based testing assessment area. So that was a little over 50,000. And just a note going to the board, the org number had a transpose number in there, so we just corrected that for the board, just so you know.
Okay, thanks. Can I have a motion before we discuss to move this forward?
So moved.
Thank you, Colin. Anyone want a second?
Aye.
Diana, great, thank you. The only discussion point I have is how sad it makes me to see us choose not to invest in library books, especially at Silvermine, where I know they desperately needed the bilingual books. So hopefully at some point we can restore that funding if it becomes available somewhere down the line. Anyone else? Discussion? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And Sherelle says yes. So that's unanimous. And next on our list
Is
is
I
the
think
financial report.
the financial report, and I'll let Kristen jump in, but obviously we're still very early in the fiscal year, so this report is through August. There isn't a whole lot that you can generally sort of glean from the financial report through August, because school hasn't started yet, and there just isn't that much to report. But I don't know, Kristen, you looked at the report. Is there anything you wanted to draw your attention to?
Yep, so if you've scrolled down to page 2, right, we're 2 months into the year, school hadn't started at this point in time, 16% spending from just the central office point of view. Obviously, we have to do some upfront spending. And what I noticed from going through this, we may have to do a few reclasses from our typical accounts into maybe some of the COVID or CRF funds, the $10 million that we had received, because we haven't fully decided and voted on how we're spending that. So we may have to reclass out of some of these accounts. So I did realize that. On page 2, we have some overtime or extra work, and that's related to summer school. People who had to do extra work related to the reopening, and custodial for, additional cleaning. The 137 account was certified hourly. That's a little bit on the higher side, and that's related also to summer school and unpacking and getting ready for the reopening. So that makes sense there. On the bottom there, the 230 account is for retirement payments. That's the normal course of business. Page 3, we have the 250 account, which is unemployment, and that's 104,000. That was actually the June bill, so we may need to reclass that to old year. We have to take a look at that. I just noticed that with the comptroller's office.
Yeah, I think that's the way the comptroller, they charge it and then they reclass it back. So they should
Right.
really take care of that.
So that will, on the next month's tracking and spending report, it should not show there, that particular item. Same thing with the 324 account field trips. That looks like a refund from CGS trips that weren't taken due to COVID. And the 330 account, this looks, the 202,000, that's for upfront spending we would typically do for PD, training, frontline, adult education, the expense we pay Stanford. If you scroll down to page 4, property services, the 430 account, the 429,000, that's on the higher side, but that's related to COVID as well. It's technology maintenance related to Power School and some other programs that we, needed maintenance on. That's normal course of business plus COVID related.
Kristen,
Page,
can I ask you a question? Sorry to bother you. Do we have an account dedicated to COVID? And if so, what's the account number?
we do. We have started to set up particular accounts in the grants area for the 10 million we had received, but we're not really spending it yet until we've worked out some of this and flushed out some of the numbers.
Got it. So you're holding it in that separate grants area. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, that's in the grants area. At one point last year when COVID first hit, we did actually set up a separate object code for COVID expenses. And we were coding things there, but then we got some guidance from the state that said that we still needed to report any COVID-related expenses in their normal area on the EFS financial report. So we had to end up going and reclassify all these COVID expenses. Originally we had it there thinking it would make sense to kind of isolate it and keep track of it. But we've really found that we need to sort of keep track of it offline through spreadsheets and so forth for purposes of applying for grants. But the state wants, if we spend money on, PPE, then there's going to be an object code related to, safety equipment or something like that it would get coded to. And so it needs to be properly reflected at the end of the year on the EFS report.
It's going to be fascinating in 3 years because it's going to affect the state per pupil expenditure numbers. Everybody's numbers are going to shoot up for 1 year.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Right. It's going to be hard for us to compare apples and oranges.
That's a good point. Now that you're talking about the COVID account, though, it's the object code 912, as Tom was saying, and there's a sliver of it in there, but that could be timing of when this report was ran versus, clearing out the last few items on that.
Okay,
Anything else? Page 6, the 613 account. This is a prime example. The 704,000 there relates to the HEPA filters, which are also on the reopening COVID list. So we're going to need to, once we figure all that out, reclass that to the proper accounts. But that's what that big spend is. And
those filters have a 10-year lifespan, right? So it's not just benefiting us in COVID, but long term.
Yeah, I'm sure people will want to keep them in place and running. I'm sure they'll be popular. I don't know. One of the things we didn't look at was the operating expense, because there will be some electricity cost associated with them. I don't know how much that's going to be, but I assume we'll keep them in place and let people continue to use them even when COVID is past us. But
yeah, it may actually help us reduce the risk of mold in our classrooms, which actually could be a savings in the long term.
Yeah.
I think it'll help us also during flu and the cold season to mitigate some of the other viruses that, although not as concerning as COVID, can spread quite quickly in a classroom. So long term, it's going to be an added value to the schools.
Absolutely.
Okay,
page 7, 733, instructional software. That's, some of the typical things we spend money on, Gaggle, Edgenuity, etc. And that was about it. I was just going to point out the COVID account had a sliver of money in it that we have to take out of there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that was the COVID account we set up. So there is still something that'll get journal entered out somewhere else. Okay. So I don't know if there's any questions on the financial report.
Anybody? Okay.
Still too early, as Tom said.
Okay. So.
And we received no public comment, so I think that is a non-issue. So With that, is there any final discussion or should we move to adjourn? Sherelle moved to adjourn. Colin, are you seconding?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody, for keeping us up to date on this important information.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Hope you're all
for the
well.
Good evening,
details.
everyone.
Thank
Good night,
you.
everyone.
Good night.